Well, greetings and welcome to the Dividing Line. My name's James White, and I'm coming to you from really, really cold St. Charles, Missouri. Got down to 18 last night, and I put out my little weather. I've got a little weather station that I normally only put out when I'm up in Denver, just for the fun of it during the monsoons and stuff. But I put it out, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what it gets down to tonight. I explained yesterday, first time the unit's been in this kind of temperature, and so there's some issues I'm dealing with. I can't get any water into the fresh water tank. Maybe it's the inlet's frozen. I'm not sure. But other than that, we're doing okay, and it's going to be another cool evening, and I'm coming to the conclusion that I've been short-circuiting the unit's abilities to stay warm by using space heaters. It seems like it's designed to use its central furnace, and I think that central furnace is what helps keep some of the plumbing and stuff like that where it needs to be. So I'm making adjustments and things like that. But anyways, we're here. It's a cloudless night, so I can't imagine it's not going to plummet. It's only 24 degrees right now, so who knows what it'll get down to here this evening. I actually haven't looked at at the weather prognostication because anyway, and so this is one of my favorite. Is this a tundra or Kuji? Don't remember. Anyway, but it's cotton. It's really light. So the thing I'm wearing underneath it, I didn't even remember I had this. It is this like super duper wool stuff. It's super light, but it's like, if it wasn't, according to one of the thermometers I can see, 52 degrees in here, I would be dying. But I'm actually quite comfortable with this on. So, hey, a bunch of you commented on Twitter, yeah, we'll move up here to Alaska. There's a reason I don't live in Alaska. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been there for 50 years. I am acclimated to the heat. Yes, I was born in Minnesota, but and in December. And I was told it was very, very cold. But only spent a few years there. So I have long since lost my cold weather acclimation. I'm enjoying it. But in the back of my mind, there's always this thought, man, would you really want to do this for, 5 months out of the year? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. At least I'm not, the snow melted the day I got here. There had been snow, and it melted, and so I'm not fighting with all that mush and slush and stuff like that. But anyways, here we are, and it's the second day in a row of doing the program. So what in the world could I come up with to talk about the second day? Well, it's that time of year we get so busy with things that if I sit here and say most of you are aware, that's sort of silly. I have someone saying that no link has been posted for today. Well, I'm sorry. I have no control over such things. But if we could post a link somewhere, Ken would like to watch. And maybe you could even send it to Ken so he could watch. Anyway, yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, oral arguments were presented before the Supreme Court on a Tennessee law that prohibits cross-sex hormones and I believe also puberty blockers. I could be wrong about that. But it's fundamentally a law intended to, in some fashion, protect young people from bodily mutilation. Now, what's amazing, I don't think that term even was used at any point in the oral arguments. They lasted, I think, right around 2 hours. Well, it may have been longer than that. I had it at 1.25. So I think in the program I was using, it adjusts the time depending on that. So anyway, I listened to all the arguments. I could not help but think back on a dark day. In June of 2015, I spoke up in Flagstaff at a conference that I'll never be invited to again, sadly. Enjoyed it, but things change over 9 years, unfortunately. And that's when Obergefell came down. I think Obergefell came down the day after my wedding anniversary, so I think it came down June 26th. And then I drove up. I know it's in Utah. I'd assume, yeah, I had to have gone up to Colorado, and then I guess I came back through Utah or something. I don't remember exactly what I did, but I do know that I was on the 15 southbound through central and southern Utah as I listened to, Rich is complaining. I only got 10 minutes warning. Yeah, I know, but as an old friend of ours used to say, let it be said, let it be done. He's no longer with us. But anyway, I see what you're doing. You're posting it. I hope you posted it in the AO road trip thing there, and that way they can see it and catch up with it their way. Okay, good. So hopefully Ken and Viv and Kelly get to watch. Anyway, I was driving down the 15, and I had figured out how to convert text files to audio files by that point in time. That's quite a while ago. And I remember listening to, aka read while driving, the majority opinion in the Obergefell case. And when I got done listening to that, even while I was listening to it, I just felt I felt like our nation was done. If the Supreme Court of the United States could put out this kind of childish, emotion-filled, irrational, illogical mess, and in so doing completely redefined marriage, completely changed the very foundations of Western society, then what was coming in the future? And I've also commented a number of times over the 9 years plus since that happened, that it was like a switch was flipped. Starting the end of June of 2015, everything changed. And what do I mean? The emphasis of the culture of death, the emphasis of the LGBTQIA+++ revolution immediately pivoted. It was like the preceding 10 years hadn't happened. The emphasis upon homosexual mirage, all of that stuff. It's like, okay, we've got it. Keep the pressure going. Keep the money coming in. And there is an immediate pivot to an attack upon creation itself. We don't know what a man is. We don't know what a woman is. Transgenderism. And it happened so fast that it's like, you can't do that quickly if it wasn't already planned. And I really believe that it was. And so the pivot takes place. They had to profane marriage because marriage and the family, God's first ordained institution, stood in the way of their rebellion, stood in the way of their revolution. And so once they got that, now they needed to go even lower. And what I mean lower, to the more basic reality. So you've now profaned marriage. So now go even lower and deeper into the very nature of man, created as male and female. And that's what we've been focused upon now for the past 9 years. And I'll be honest with you, you can pretty much read most of the justices. Listening to the 3 female ideologues on the court. It's just so hard to even listen to them. Jackson, Sotomayor, they weren't, quote unquote, asking questions. They were working with the Biden regime and the Solicitor General and a transgender attorney, the first one to testify before the Supreme Court. Well, that individual, I didn't say pictures, but I'd assume it's a guy pretending to be female, or I don't know which one it is. But anyway, they're working with them. They are advocating in the oral arguments. They're not asking questions. They're not even pretending to be neutral. They are advocating plainly, clearly, aggressively. When the representative from the state of Tennessee got to speak at the end, and he didn't get nearly as much time, but he was getting interrupted by these women, and they're just arguing with him. I mean, it was just so obvious what they're going to do. The question is, what will Gorsuch and Barrett do? Because Gorsuch surprised everybody in voting, in showing himself to be supportive of transgender rights. And as Dr. Moeller pointed out on the briefing, well, I think he was pointing out the same thing that immediately crossed my mind. Gorsuch did graduate studies in natural law at Oxford. And so you would think that a natural law expert and advocate would be able to see what's right in front of all of us. A society that cannot identify male and female, a society that gives in to this absurd notion that gender dysphoria, and look, 99% of transgenderism is rebellion and revolution, not gender dysphoria. And I'm not even including truly intersexed people. In other words, people who have a specific genetic abnormality in regards to their sex chromosomes. There are dozens of various syndromes, genetic abnormalities, and those individuals need to be cared for and encouraged and all that stuff. No question about it. But that's not what transgenderism is. That's not what the transgender revolution is. I saw a graphic. I wish I had. Oh, it was on Fox, so I guess I couldn't have grabbed it. But I saw a graphic with a breakdown by generations, which again, I'm not overly happy about that kind of stuff these days. But a breakdown by generations about who identifies as, non-gender binary, transgender. The terminology is off the charts. And it's a tiny percentage in my generation, and then a little bit more in the next, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then you get to Gen Z, or whatever the current young people generation is, and it's like 22.7%. And you're like, excuse me, isn't this obvious? Isn't it clear that this is social media, TikTok, YouTube produced hysteria, insanity? It is, obviously. There's no question about it. And so, ever since Obergefell, the focus has been turned to making it impossible for us to even identify male and female, let alone have any kind of meaningful conversation concerning male and female roles or anything like that. All that, everything we used to talk about, like women should not be in combat. I believe that wholeheartedly. Are there exceptional women who can participate in that? Yes, but here's the problem. Let's say you have a great woman soldier. The other guys around her will protect her because they're men. That's what men do. That's how men were created. They will protect her at the risk of their own life. That massively reduces the efficiency of any fighting unit. On the police force, you've seen the videos. You've seen, 2 women police officers trying to arrest a single adult male, and they can't do it. He's able to just throw them around. And of course, how many of them have been killed as a result of being put out there? Even when there's more than one of them. It's just, God created male and female and gave them certain capacities and abilities and roles as a result. And our society has decided we are wiser than all who came before us. And so we are going to change all of this. And we're going to make the older ones amongst us feel guilty that they ever believed these things. Have you noticed that? I mean, if you look back to what we were saying, 10 years ago, before Obergefell, if you say those same things now in almost any major corporation, you're going to be in deep trouble. You're certainly not going to get advanced in your position. And you are made to feel guilty for ever having believed what we believed only 10 years ago. And none of this, zero of this is because of some kind of major advancement in ethical and moral dialogue and discussion. Nope, not because of that. Why is it happen? We literally are becoming a culture where the depth of moral and ethical dialogue has to be able to fit into tweets. Maybe a semi-long Facebook post at most. There are great advantages to the ability to communicate quickly and broadly, but man, there are a lot of negatives as well. And just as we have not done a really good job adjusting to the information revolution that the internet and especially social media has introduced, I don't think we're anywhere near ready to deal with the AI revolution that's already upon us. And the fact that AI is going to be used to censor us and to fundamentally alter the cultural narrative by whoever is controlling the AI. And, those are very shadowy persons. So anyway, back to my experience today. And by the way, you can go to the Supreme Court webpage, and all this stuff is available for download. Download MP3. Boom, boom. Excuse me. And you also could. There are a number of programs. I was put on notice about one that's specifically sort of for my Mac that will produce transcripts. Now, YouTube can do that too, I guess. I've never really been able to do this consistently. But having a transcript of something you've listened to can be extremely useful and helpful as well. I had one called Libretto, but honestly, I think it was slower than just listening to the audio file. It really, really took a long time. This new one that I have, I think it's called Ico or Aco. Anyway, it's much faster in producing a transcript. But they have written transcripts on the Supreme Court page. They have the audio MP3 download. I'm glad. Hey, let's be thankful. Thanksgiving's barely over. Let's be thankful for the things we have. There are a lot of countries where you don't get to listen to, the oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court. That's a good thing. Don't know how long that will remain. But, yeah, it's a good thing. So, anyway, the one thing about being this cold, it is dry. Oh, dry. Possibility of rain over the weekend. So, this Midwestern stuff, people, what? Can't you just have, the same weather for more than 12 hours? It just changes all the time. So anyway, I'm listening to the ideologues on the left. I'm listening to the good guys. Clarence Thomas asks some questions. He sounds old. I suppose that's one of the advantages of Trump winning. I would imagine he will retire, and I don't know if Sotomayor will, do what the other lady did and stick it out. So, try to stick it out till the next election or whatever. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But the good guys, it was highly technical. A lot of legal jargon. But there was almost no common sense worldview discussion at all. It's like it's forbidden. You could never use the term mutilation. You have to use the new words, the new terminology, gender affirming care. What does that even mean? You're talking about fundamentally changing the body. And you're talking about risking this person's entire future life. There was some discussion of loss of fertility and, irreversible actions being taken that cannot be undone. And of course, the Biden Solicitor General was trying to say that detransitioners are extremely rare and that gender affirming care is extremely helpful in reducing a tendency toward suicide. I've actually heard just the opposite of that. But that's the problem. You can, especially when it comes to this stuff, there's so much money involved. There's so much money that can be made that you can rent an expert. They're all over the place. But listening to the good guys, trying to ask good questions, and even listening to the guy from Tennessee defending their law, you could tell there were certain things you cannot say. There were certain things you cannot say. And I forgive me, I apologize. I had actually taken the time to, let's see here. Put down
this morning in case
some timestamps.
2477 United
And
States
so
versus
I
Finetti.
forgot to load the file. I apologize. Let me
Mr.
look
Chief
it up here
Justice,
real quickly.
And may it please the
All
court.
right.
This case is about access to medications that have been safely prescribed for
This
decades
first
to
clip,
treat
as
many
I
conditions,
recall,
including
I think
gender
is Sotomayor,
dysphoria.
might have been
But
Kagan.
SB1 singles out and bans
it
one
wasn't
particular
Jackson.
use. In Tennessee, these medications can't be prescribed
And
to
they're going
allow
back
a
and
minor
forth,
to identify with or live as a gender
advocating for
inconsistent with the
one
minor's
particular
sex.
side, clearly.
It doesn't matter what parents decide
And
is
let
best
me
for
see
their
if I
children.
can
It doesn't matter what
cue it up here. It would have been easier to have this all set up. Oh my goodness, that's the smallest font on the phone. There we go.
Assuming a similarly
all right, this will be
statute that there still would not
in the
be
general area,
a sex
hopefully,
or a transgender-based
and I'm going to have to do the mute, unmute, blah, blah, blah stuff. So if I forgot to turn my microphone back on, it's all my fault. Let's listen into. Hopefully, this will be at the right point because I was listening at a higher speed. So let's just find out what.
And this court has not hesitated to hold laws unconstitutional under rational basis review when they are rooted in unsubstantiated fears and prejudices. That's exactly what this. Your Honor, we think that if we're assuming a similarly worded statute, that there still would not be.
Okay, so obviously, when I was moving the thing, it started doing it. I couldn't hear it. I apologize for that. We thought we had that fixed, but it didn't work out right. And Rich wants to. Maybe on the way home we'll get it fixed. Anyways, let's try this again.
Be a sex or a transgender-based classification.
So your licensing states to deprive grown adults of the choice of which sex to adopt.
Your Honor, I don't.
Now, did you catch that? Your licensing states to remove from people the choice of which sex to adopt. Okay. Does anybody else see the mountain of rebellious insanity behind what that Supreme Court Justice, I think it was Sotomayor, I could be wrong, but I think it is. Does anybody else see that mountain of absurdity in this woman's thinking? Here's what I wanted to try to communicate. There is no way out of this abyss of cultural insanity without coming to recognition and understanding that you must have an objective foundation in reality. You must know objective truth about the purpose of this creation, our purpose as human beings. You cannot have consistent law that will have any relationship whatsoever to the world in which we live if you do not have a clear word from God. This will be a never-ending abyss. All you're going to have with these Supreme Court decisions and everything else is man's compromising, man going with the current, cultural climate, going with the, whatever the new theory is, and there'll never be any consistency. You can't have consistency when you're operating on the foundation that God hasn't spoken. We don't know what a man is. We don't know what a woman is. We don't know what a boy is. We don't know what a girl is. We don't know what the purpose of mankind is. Can't anybody else see that there's no way out of this? That it's a labyrinth of our own creation? That basically what we've done is we've just blindfolded everybody. And now we're just running into each other and wondering why everybody keeps getting bloody noses and everything else. The cultural degradation. I don't know what the court's going to decide. I'm concerned that it could be 5-4 or even 6-3 against Tennessee. And, where does that lead? Who knows? But it would certainly be viewed as a tremendous victory for transgenderism and would be interpreted that way. And so when I look at this and I listen to this as a Christian pastor, theologian, apologist, whatever you want to call me, Coogee wearing moron, as most of you are calling me these days on the internet. As I listen to these intelligent people trying to function in God's world with their eyes firmly shut, my heart breaks for them, first of all, but my heart breaks for the society. Can you imagine what the founding fathers would have thought if they had listened to what I listened to today? What would George Washington be saying? What would John Adams be saying? What would even Thomas Jefferson be saying? They could not even begin to contemplate, to conceive of the blindness of modern American jurisprudence. And I think even the Franklins and the Jeffersons would stand back and go, whoa, wait a minute, that's pretty radical stuff you're doing there. Are we really going to be able to hold a nation together without the cohesion that the Christian faith provided at the start? And the answer is rather obvious. No. No, we won't. We will destroy it. There's once you jump off that cliff, there aren't any little bushes hanging out there you can grab hold to on the way down that are going to hold your weight. You're just hurtling toward destruction. And so I listen to you are taking away someone's choice as to which sex they're going to be. You sit back and you just go, do you hear yourself? Do you hear the absurdity? You're never going to change your genetics. And even if you could, it's not going to change the reality of who you were made. I mean, there's all the dystopian stuff out there. I think about Brave New World. And if you've never read Brave New World, it's not a Christian book, obviously, just a warning ahead of time. But in Brave New World, we're all produced in test tubes. And there's the A's and the B's and the C's and the D's and the E's and the F's. And that's the sliding scale of intellect. And the ones down here are the trash collectors and menial people. And then as you go up, You are genetically engineered to have a greater intellect. Yet, as comes out in the book and then comes out in the movie as well, an intellect is only as good as its real connection to this world that God made. And you start engineering man like that. You start saying, well, you can just choose what you want to be. How do you... would this Supreme Court justice not find it really, really super strange that someone would self-identify as a horse? Are you taking away their choice as to what species they can choose to be? What has happened? I mean, Darwin kicked the gate open for all this. Let's just be honest about that. None of this could happen. None of this could have ever happened without Darwin. You go, whoa, where'd that come from? If that seems strange to you, like I just changed subjects, I didn't change subjects at all. You just haven't thought it through. That's not some different subject. Darwin opened the door for a godless cosmology, where there is no objective truth, there is no transcendent meaning, there is no male and female, there is no purpose in marriage, family, culture. Darwin did all of it. I'm not saying that was the only thing that happened. Obviously, there's a bunch of other stuff that happened along the way that had to come alongside. But the biggest thing that kicked the door open and opened the way for all the rest of that stuff, and then other things that had been developing before Darwin now, exploded. And that's why we are where we are now. No question about it. But what an astonishing thing at the end of 2024 to hear a Supreme Court justice sitting there going, well, if Tennessee's law is upheld, then you're telling people that they can't choose to be a different sex than they are. Well, yeah, I guess so. Sure hope that hasn't been playing. I assume if it had been playing in the background, Rich would have told me something about it. I would have gotten a little notification here. Then a few minutes later, and I don't think I started that, so good. All right. A few minutes later, we have this. No, I'm still here. Why isn't that playing? Do. Okay, I'll hit stop, and we'll try it all over again.
We'll hear argument this morning in case 23-4.
Oh, well, I don't like this.
We'll hear
this
argument
program.
this.
I will use a different one next time. All right.
I disagree. If you take out and recognize medical reality, then there is no argument that our law differentiates between treatments for males and females.
Can I ask you about one of the purposes of this law? And I note that your brief does not talk a lot about this, but one of the articulated purposes of this law is essentially to encourage gender conformity and to discourage anything other than gender conformity. And I'm wondering how you think that plays into the analysis.
I disagree with that characterization of our law.
Encourage minors to appreciate their sex and ban treatments that might encourage minors to become disdainful of their sex. Sounds to me like We want boys to be boys, and we want girls to be girls.
If I could...
And that's an important purpose behind the law. And I understand that sentiment, but it's a fundamentally different sentiment, and it's a fundamentally different understanding of what produced this law than the one that you are talking about now.
Your Honor, if I could make a few points. First of all, it sounds like the question is rooted in a potential improper purpose-based argument under our Arlington Heights argument, which, as Chief Judge Sutton pointed out below, that argument was never raised until it got to this court.
Well, I'm less interested in sort of like the legal box to put this in, and more interested in, you're spending a lot of time talking about what exactly the classification is here, and I think we've talked a good deal about that. But what produced this classification might be relevant to understanding what the classification is about.
Absolutely, and I would love to address...
And what seems to have produced this classification is that we want to ban treatments that might encourage minors to become disdainful of their sex. So we think that there's something fundamentally wrong, fundamentally bad about youth who are trying to transition. And that's the way this purpose seems to me.
If I could try to...
There you go. And, the sad thing is this guy's trying his best to run from that. Because you have to run from that. But I sure hope that's what they were trying to do. I sure hope that they were, in fact, what's being said here is we can't call it good to help little boys become men and to recognize that they have been made by God as males and that it's good. And that there are roles to be fulfilled and duties to perform and privileges to have. You can't do that with girls either. I mean, feminism already taught us that, right? Here's what we as parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, this is what we have to recognize. And that is that this is the default view now of our society. This is what our kids, grandkids, great-grandkids are going to be hit with, even when it's not being explicitly stated. It's the default view. And a lot of people really struggle to respond to default views and to express themselves in a way that's understandable to everybody else around them that's embraced the default view, and they don't want to get rid of it. They like it. They're happy to live with it. They don't see that it's damaging their life. And so how do you it's one thing to teach our kids God created you. He made you. That's good. That you got to have a creator if you're going to get anywhere else. But the challenge for the next generations is going to be, how do you prophetically honor Christ by speaking his truth to a society that has been steeped in this kind of defective and destructive worldview that changes language? So that if you try to say what God says is good and true and right, the only way you can do that is by using offensive language. I mean, it's very clear that, again, I think this is Sotomayor, I think Kagan only spoke once, so I'm assuming it was Sotomayor. It's clear that in her mind, she says, we understand that sentiment. What's the sentiment? That you want boys to be happy that they're boys and to embrace their role and to embrace their capacities and abilities and encourage them to be the best man they can be. And that girls are to be nurtured and told that they've been created by God to have special abilities. They can nurture life. They can impact people like nobody else can. You're not allowed to say that. And there is a presuppositional rejection of the goodness of the created order in our society today. And it didn't start yesterday. It started, hey, guess what? It started before the boomers. Sorry, guys, you don't get to blame the boomers for everything. I'm sorry. You're going to do it anyway, so it doesn't make any difference. But anyway, this has been going on for a long time. But we've gone over the tipping point. So that you look at the next generation, the young generation now, 22.7% identify as some type of transgender? Whereas amongst my generation, it was like 1.7%. How does that happen? Well, you've gone over the tipping point. And we're now looking at a generation that has pretty much been raised by secularists. Even when I was in public school, I was public educated. Homeschool movement hadn't started. Yeah, I think there were some Christian schools and stuff, but my parents couldn't afford that. We were poor as church mice. And so even in the public schools, there was still a lot of Christian concepts that were just given. They were still accepted. And they've been pushed out more and more and more and more until now, functionally, for the vast majority of young people, they don't exist anymore. It's not there. So we're looking at a thoroughly secular generation coming up. And so Isaiah 5, white is black, good is evil. I suppose you could say 1984, same thing. That's where we are. And that's another reason why we have to teach our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, having a Christian worldview, understanding where your thought process must start, is not just something you do during a lesson in homeschool. It has to be your default way of operating every single day, encountering everything in our society. It has to be how you live. And so I wanted to close with a reminder of a particular text. And I've already gone 49 minutes here. But everybody knows, and if you're like Algo, you've heard me talk about this many times, but it is important to remind people of this. In 1 Peter 3:15, all your modern translations will read something along the lines of, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence or fear. Having a good conscience, so on and so forth. You know the text in regards to apologetics. This is where the term comes from, all the rest of that stuff. But the key issue is this. This is a quotation, and I'm very thankful that the the Nestle-Aland text continues the citation from Isaiah chapter 8, beginning of verse 12. It shows you that continues into verse 15. Most modern translations don't show you that. So even in the LSB, you'll notice it'll say, and do not fear their fear and do not be troubled, but sanctify Christ the Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense. Do not fear their fear and do not be troubled is all in caps. So that's the LSB and the NASB's way of saying this is a Old Testament citation. In the Greek text, that is in italics, which is its way of doing that. But so is the term Lord in verse 15 and sanctify or treat as holy. Because those are continued, that's a continued quotation from Isaiah chapter 8. One other thing, real quickly, like I said, don't have a lot of time, but one other thing, real quickly, there's textual variant here. And so the Textus Receptus and the King James, New King James, majority text, I believe, say, sanctify the Lord God in your hearts. But the term sanctify Christ, ton Christon, and then you've got kurion. I suppose I could. Yeah, I can. Hold on a second here. Got to get it large enough so even I can see it on the screen. Let me see here. Yeah. There we go. Little teeny box again. Still got to fix that. So see here, you have kurion and hagiasate are still in italics in the Nestle-Aland 28th edition here, which shows that the editors recognize this is the same continued citation from Isaiah 8 that you see up here in verse 14. And then the variant here, and I doubt you can see that's super, well, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, that's a little bit bigger. Yeah, that makes it somewhat better. You can see the variant that's marked there in the Greek text, and the text is read by P72, which is the earliest manuscript we have of 1st, 2nd Peter, and Jude. When we did the thing at G3 in Washington, we went to the Bible Museum. They had a nice facsimile of P72 there, and I showed people that unofficially. Didn't let me do a tour, but we did it unofficially. P72, Sinaiticus Alexandrinus Vaticanus, C. Psi, 33, 1175, 1243, 1611. 1739 is a pretty important minuscule manuscript that clearly had like a 2nd century exemplar. So it's from like the 10th century, but it had a very, very early, it's a very early text, 1739 is. Many Latin, Syriac, Coptic manuscripts as well say Christ, sanctify Christ. What did I do wrong now? What? Lost the stream? Everything's cool here. Huh. Well, Rich says, fine on my end. Well, we'll finish up here and upload the recording. Sorry about that. So this is weird because I'm looking at the thing and it says cache is okay, data rate's okay, connection's okay, and Rich says it's gone. So we're getting close to the end here, anyways. We'll finish up. So The earlier manuscripts all have Christ as the reading here rather than Lord God. So let me make a quick application and we'll wrap up. So if you set Christ as Lord, treat him as holy, as Lord in your hearts. This is a recognition of who Christ is, because this is talking about Yahweh. He's entered into human flesh. When you place him in the proper place as the central focus of your thinking, because that's what the heart's about. We're not talking about, Valentine's Day. We're talking about what defines you as you. When you treat as holy the incarnate one who has entered into flesh to redeem you, when that is, and this is a command for all people, all Christians are to do this, sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts. That will fundamentally orient your entire worldview. When you look at the subject of the Tennessee law, the first thing in your mind is Genesis 1. First thing in your mind is Genesis 2, Jesus' interpretation of it in Matthew chapter 19. From the beginning, the Creator made the male and female. And you will act on the basis of that. And you will say to society, a society that will not follow its own Creator's laws is a society that will collapse. It's a society that will be destroyed. That's what's going to happen. Without that kind of objective revelation from God, all you're left with is chaos. Chaos of uncertainty, chaos of human opinion, chaos of human rebellion, revolution, human desire to fulfill every lust. It's chaos. Absolute chaos. And that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. So, hopefully that will be of some assistance and encouragement to you as we are seeking to teach our young people and ground them. This is what we need to ground them in so that they can interact with this world around us. So, with that, another dividing line on the road taken care of, speaking on this subject this weekend here in St. Charles. We'll see you again next week when we get back. Thanks for watching the program. God bless.